And you two live in this world. I would say I'm adjacent to the world, but I don't live in it. And most people aren't even adjacent to it.
Yeah.
So death is a really foreign thing. The reason I suspect that this can gets kicked down the road so much in fact, that after all the can kicking, people get to the end of their life, there's no road and there's just a pile of cans. So what is it culturally that prevents us from talking about this when we're 50, when we're 60, when we're 70?
When we're 30.
Why is it? Because it's become such a, I don't know if I want to say it's a black box. I don't want to say it's a mystery, but it's just something that we don't want to talk about. And as such, I really believe that that's why we get to that 3 week, okay, fine, we're pulling the plug, it's 3 weeks and you fall off a cliff kind of thing. Do we know anything about other cultures? Do we know, how is it in Japan? How is it in Europe? How is it in other parts of the world? Do we know anything about how end of life functions there?
A little bit. Culturally, there's a lot to study. I mean, often it'd be so fun to take a couple years and really study the anthropology around dying and which cultures, how cultures do this differently. We've been dying a long time, but one thing I think—
It's our greatest skill.
Yeah. I mean, we're really good at it. You will not
definitely
fail
do
at
it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you will not fail at.
I promise you. So, and I think what you're calling attention to, there's the culture. So Scandinavian cultures, Japan, a place that venerates its elders, and aging and dying are different, but they bump into each other a lot. So my armchair read on, say, life in Japan, where the comfort of being in old skin might be a different experience, but there you're still left with the sort of natural phenomenon and cultural phenomenon of aging bumping into this healthcare system idea. And that is the cognitive dissonance. We have these systems that are engineered and wired in such a way that are so at odds with Mother Nature on some level and so blind to cultural issues in the name of science in so many sort of reductive ways that I think you'd still, if you were in Japan, I think you'd still find a healthcare system that struggles with this question, even as the culture maybe doesn't as much. Similar probably in Scandinavia. But I think in those places, and in the Scandinavian model, one of the things that comes up for people at the end of life is, other living issues like housing, like, your relationships, they're still there. So one of the things that makes dying harder in this country is the social determinants of health in society are not cared for. So you still have your housing issues when you're trying to die. You still got bill paying things that are, that's the stuff that makes dying extraordinarily hard in some cases or in many cases.
So you're saying the lower, the wider net of the social safety net here compared to a country like Canada or Scandinavia or Japan, presumably, just adds one more stressor to an already stressful situation.
Largely. And any one sentence doesn't do it justice because, as you said, the healthcare systems, these places, they can also do amazing work. And so I don't want to just blindly, categorically denigrate a healthcare system in any country. There's some good things happen, but it is such a mixed bag. And as many problems as it solves, it creates some other ones, especially around issues that people struggle to look at. To your point, still holds. Like we do have a problem, and why Bridget and I came this far, besides to see your smiling face, but to talk about this in such a way that allows an audience as large as yours to begin to think about this before it's sort of too late. This is, I think, all of our work as citizens to begin to rope this part of reality into our views so that we can prepare ourselves for it and we can live with these realities and not be so surprised by the fact that we die someday. In part is so that we learn how to advocate for ourselves versus, I'd love to see our health system mature around these issues and we'll continue to work on that or towards that. But I think the bigger note for your audience is what can each of us do to prepare ourselves in ways that the health system is not. In some ways, you're going to have to say no to health. Like, to die well in this country, at some point, you kind of have to say no thanks to medicine. One thing your audience needs to appreciate and why advanced directives are so helpful, for example, is the system is it is by the default modes of our healthcare system would be just do more stuff, prop your body up, anything to give you a pulse. Unless you've written or stated otherwise, we're going to just try to protect you having a pulse. Most of us don't equate having a pulse with actually really being alive, and that becomes a problem at some point. We in this sort of carnival where we can really prop up a body almost indefinitely. So it becomes you have to find a way to say no to that and unwind what that hospital can do. You have to get out of the way of that to die peacefully in this country. Does that make some sense?
No. I mean, BJ, it makes so much sense. And as you're saying it, I'm just reflecting on the internal struggle that I think most nurses and doctors experience. And we don't talk about it much, but I remember during residency, the pride that I took in how heroic we could be, what we could do for a patient in the ICU, like how many central lines I could put in you and how I could look at all the different cultures and figure out the 5 antibiotics you need and how good I was at managing your dialysis and getting that CVVHD to manage the pressure and this and that and how I could alter the intra-aortic balloon pump to just keep your heart, like, there was such a sense of awesomeness in like this technology.
It is awesome.
But then you take a step back and you're thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? This is a physiologic experiment. It's not a life anymore. And you would say, well, is there a chance that this person's going to recover? Well, of course, there's always a chance, but how big does that chance need to be for the expected outcome to justify what you're doing? And there's 2 ways to answer this question. The first is economically. That's an easier way to answer it because expected outcomes are probabilities. It's what is the expected outcome of this survival multiplied by the cost of this intervention. You take the dot product of those, you add them all up. There's the cost of your healthcare system with respect to end-of-life care. Let's put that aside. There's the human one, right? There's the how many people are spending their last weeks or months in an ICU where they are, for all intents and purposes, no longer there, right? Because the amount of sedation you have to put on a person to keep them in that state is extreme. They're now swelling into a Michelin Man. And is this what we want their families' final memories to be of them?
Something I, as you're talking, I just like feel I have such visceral memories of, sitting in those family meetings in the ICU where the person in the bed is unrecognizable. And, the expectation that physicians and nurses and social workers and spiritual, that the healthcare teams should be able to have all of that expertise knowledge, not all of it, just some of the expertise knowledge that you just outlined. And then also the very nuanced interpersonal capacity to, with a relative stranger, ask some of the biggest philosophical questions in a moment of crisis. I mean, that is like, in some ways, a beyond human expectation of physicians, which is where and many do it, I mean, just like with profound grace and beauty, even when it really doesn't feel like it to them. But that's where sort of like the consumer side or the patient side is like, come in having wrestled with it. Not because you were given a diagnosis of a serious illness, but because we all do die. And that kind of gets back to your original question, like, this is hard because it's kind of impossible to imagine not existing anymore, to actually psychologically, spiritually, philosophically grapple with like, I'm here and I won't be. And my children are here and they won't be, and my spouse is here and they won't be, and maybe I can kind of wrap my head around that being true for my grandparents, maybe, and then my parents, like, this is a fundamental sort of contemplation of being human, and it's a good muscle. It's a life-giving muscle, I think, to start to flex when you are healthy, when you feel good, when you're like, it is actually true that I don't know when I'm going to die. It could be because I'm hit by a bus. It could be from some unexpected, instantaneous physiologic thing, or it could be some process when I'm 85. Like, we don't know. And collectively, we have a hard time talking about and being in spaces together when fundamentally we don't know.
I'm Peter Attia. This podcast relies exclusively on premium subscribers for support, which allows us to provide all our content without taking a single penny from advertisers. I believe this keeps my content honest, making it a trusted resource for listeners like you. As a premium member, you'll get immediate access to our entire back catalog of AMA episodes and all future AMA episodes. You'll get longevity-focused premium articles packed with actionable insights. You'll get unrivaled show notes for each and every episode of The Drive, every topic, every study, every resource from each episode carefully curated for you. You'll get quarterly podcast summaries where you'll learn my biggest personal takeaways from the previous 90 days of expert guest episodes and much more. This journey doesn't have to be navigated alone. We can take these steps towards a better, longer life together. Become a premium member today at peterattiamd.com/subscribe to join me in a shared commitment to a healthier future.